Now I'd like to call upon our stellar panelists for the first session on stage. Jaideep Kewalramani, Head of Employability Business and COO, TeamLease Edtech. Kanishk Gaur, Founder and CEO, India Future Foundation. And Vinayak Godse, CEO, Data Security Council of India, as we discuss AI, super intelligent, super trouble. Can we have a huge round of applause for our panelists? Gentlemen, thank you for joining us at this Signature Tech event. Kanishk, I want to start off by asking you, the last time we spoke, it was on Rahul's show, News Track, and that was a couple of weeks ago. And it's strange that we talk about how technology is advancing so rapidly, but everything has changed in the AI space since we spoke last. There's more concrete talks of a regulation in the EU. The Americans are apprised of the situation as well. China has been very vocal about their investment in AI as well. Japan is doing all sorts of things. And yesterday, we also figured out that Kim Jong-un is, decisively overweight because the South Koreans use AI to decipher that. I'm just saying, ChatGPT, Google Bard, when we spoke about safeguards the last time, Kanishk, now we have a little bit of a blueprint. How much do you think it is imperative that India steps into the conversation at this point? Is this India's moment to really steer the AI revolution forward?
Thank you, Aayush. Absolutely, this is India's moment to step in. As chair of the G20, today India stands with a new approach which focuses on multilateralism. And all of us are using ChatGPT. All of us are using AI. So today in India, it's AI for everyone. Last time when we spoke, we were talking about some of the key issues with AI, but now a lot has changed. Every tech company is talking about how they want to use AI for more consumer good. They are talking about generating revenue through AI. Every new startup which is getting funded has AI or ML enabled. So a lot has changed. But at the same time, we are talking about global regulation, which is imperative to safeguard not just the developing market, but also the developed world put together. So that differentiation between the developing and the developed world is changing. We want AI which can safeguard user privacy, AI which does not have biases, AI which can prevent misuse aspects like information warfare, which is a reality today. You know, I was going through one of the plugins on ChatGPT, the new version. If you've tried using the paid version, which is for just $20, you would see that you can have GitHub, which is the largest repository on codes, being added to it. Mm-hmm. If you are a cybersecurity professional, you can put a malicious code on GitHub and everyone will start using it. So open source AI is a big issue. So how do you build out safeguards, particularly on softwares which are being provided free of cost? That's one of the key concerns. The second concern which we spoke earlier was, how do I ensure that the data that ChatGPT or any of the other products like Bard are picking up, they are picking our right sources. They are not misleaded sources. That has become even more dangerous. You know, Kim Jong's satellite just went down. We don't know why it went down. So there is a lot happening, but there is a strong need for standards, and the world is agreeing. Like we have spoken on data protection in the past, that we need global standards. Yeah. Today, we are talking about AI-enabled standards which take care of user privacy, ethics, and which also prevent harm. That's where we are heading towards.
Vinayak, I'd like you to chime in over here with your work at the Data Security Council of India. In the Web 2 world, which was all about the Googles and the Facebooks and the Amazons, well, with all our repositories of data, now when we're entering perhaps, whatever we call it, a decentralized world or a Web 3 world, AI is going to play a major role. There's no two questions about that. Yeah. But does that really arise? Do some concerns arise in your head when it comes to how these language learning models and data sets will actually be governed and how the data out there would actually be safe?
Yeah, so one thing we need to understand is now there is a language, right? So the one part up is like AI is more like an infrastructure now for the society, right? And especially the AI that we are looking at now, the LLMs that we have, right? Everybody getting access to their own simple English or vernacular language. So this is now more like an infrastructure available for all the population across the globe, because and then it is being done in such a way that planetary level data is being collected, being processed, and that intelligence is being available to you, anybody basically, to use that infrastructure basically. Only, and then when it is happening, basically everybody, for example, the script kiddie, we used to look at the script kiddies doing security attack, there they'll be significantly enabled. There are advanced actors, there are some very professionals in cybersecurity space. So kind of enablement it will give us in terms of identifying the vulnerability, one part. Then once you identify vulnerability, you can identify vulnerability more scalable way, because it helps you to automate those operations quite significantly. Then it also helps you to really craft those attacks in a scalable way, launch those at a scalable way basically. So there's definitely significant part of that is what it will lead to security basically. One part is how can it improve the security, but other part is how can you use this to do the damages, and these damages can be very scalable at a very different kind of a level, affecting society, affecting industry, affecting critical sectors as well. So that's one of the danger basically. But another danger that we see from the corporate perspective is like once you start using it and once it start mesmerizing, every corporate enterprise has their own AI programs, right? But now this is mesmerizing them, and we are putting a lot of those corporate workloads on the AI system basically, which is creating a lot of challenges for the IPR, the privacy, the sensitive data going out, and not only the normal corporate, we also see critical sector organizations struggling with this basically. So this is another challenge basically. Other challenge is the privacy and ethics, and all those challenges we definitely will look at as a part of this conversation. But one part we look at from the NASSCOM DSI perspective is the entire ecosystem which has created a lot of those jobs, right? Means intermediaries, the BPOs, call centers. In our case, the cybersecurity industry, we have startups there basically. What is going to happen with this current job is another big worry that we have from this perspective.
Jaideep, there's that classical argument about, will AI take away my job? Will it augment my existing job and the workforce? But there's an interesting report which just came out yesterday, which was a Microsoft Work Trend Index. Let me just highlight one major point. And this is specific to India. 74% of Indian workers say they are worried that AI will replace their jobs. But as many as 83% of the same people polled say that they would still delegate as much work as possible to AI to lessen their workloads. Now, you understand the entire employability piece, Jaideep. How do you strike that balance between fostering innovation, embracing AI, but still not letting employability take a hit?
And thank you, that's a very good question. So let's first understand where AI is playing. All digital jobs are at risk because of AI. Because AI is based on the computers, all the digital jobs that you're doing. Humans are very safe with all analog jobs, all physical jobs. Everything that's digital will progressively become at risk because you can train the machines to handle that. What you will need is AI augmented humans who know how to use AI effectively. But that also means that as AI is entering into organizations, you will need to create two new roles. Maybe augment one and create one new role. You'll need a chief AI officer. And second, the human resources have to turn into human and artificial intelligence resources.
The existing CTO doesn't qualify as an AI officer?
I mean, for some time they can double hat, but the world of AI is progressing so fast, you'll need some dedicated focus. I mean, companies that are purely technology, data, information oriented, they need this ASAP.
Okay. And when we're talking about regulations that Kanishk alluded to earlier, do you think it requires a collaborative approach now, given that people are talking about this being a 3-horse race, a 4-horse race with what's happening across the border, what's happening in the US? Big tech in the US on the West Coast has capitalized on this AI race, given that they had access to some of those resources, data sets, and they're now building on them. Where does India come into this picture? And I'd love to get your thoughts on that, Jaideep.
So I don't think this is about US with the #1 spot, China with #2. India will far exceed everything. I mean, we know we are the technology hub of the world. Thank you. We are the technology hub of the world. All the brilliant engineers, algorithm artists, data scientists are all coming from our ecosystem. And it's just a matter of time. In fact, India was one of the first few at the government level to recognize the power of AI and set up what we know as India AI. Government is enabling an ecosystem. Our tech companies are very progressive. look at the level of responsiveness. I mean, if 84% of the people believe that they should use AI, I mean, that's the level of our tech awareness. So it's just a matter of time where we leapfrog and get ahead in the game.
And should we all be working together? Do you think this, I mean, I know these are your thoughts. You called it a collective body. Is that something that you think is the way forward?
Absolutely. I mean, this kind of emerges from the question, and I'm sure you'll cover it later. I mean, should we pause AI development? The answer is no.
Okay.
Because if the good actors pause AI development, the bad actors are not going to stop. And given that the new Moore's law is applicable on AI with hundreds and billions of data points being added every 6 months, a 6-month pause will set the good actors behind by 5 years. We can't afford that. What we need is probably a United Nations of AI. All nations to come together and agree on what is possible in AI, what should not be possible. But we need the good actors to work very, very fast on developing the guardrails on preventing any misadventures.
We have to send a clip of what you just said to a guest on the show, who's also, if you guys step out, there is a special Business Today magazine AI special that you can get your hands on. And we had an exclusive chat on Tech Today with Professor Stuart Russell, one of the signatories to that letter to halt development of advanced AI systems like ChatGPT and Google Bard. And truly one of the godfathers of AI, along with a lot of other signatories like Steve Wozniak, Elon Musk, Kanishk. It's kind of interesting because in the second rendition, the diluted form of that letter, Sam Altman, the guy behind ChatGPT and OpenAI, also said that there are things that need to be reconsidered when you look at AI development. Does it worry you that all of these things are evolving so rapidly and there are no guardrails in place?
No, it does worry me because AI can be dangerous. There are certain safeguards which are required. One part of AI needs to be common to everybody. And there have to be certain aspects of AI which are required to be held by people who have great responsibility. And with great responsibility comes great power. That's the need of the hour. See, our Minister for Railways is creating new railroads. But at the same time, he has dual responsibility of creating digital infrastructure. Now, how do you power digital infrastructure which is powered through AI? That's something which is the need of the hour. And it's also about skilling. So while we are talking about regulations, how do we ensure that our unicorns, they keep on coming more and more? And in every sector, be it online gaming, where we are creating unicorns, be it edtech, where we are creating unicorns, there, mind you, there is a strong need of AI. And it is changing dimensions in terms of what consumer is able to see versus what he buys. And there is a risk with respect to information warfare, narrative, election interference. All of that can be a huge space. We have seen that Cambridge Analytica, that was one company which spoke about election interference. There would be multiple Cambridge Analyticas, and it is not going to be data science. It is going to be AI, which is going to be a big risk. You have got a 2024 Lok Sabha election coming in. How do you safeguard the users from taking decisions? How do you ensure that AI doesn't create any kind of bias? That's something which is the need of the hour.
Vinayak, it's interesting when we're talking about some of these guardrails and systems because AI tends to hallucinate. Often if you're using ChatGPT, all of you all in the audience, or even Google Bard for that matter, now that it's available, they do tend to hallucinate, which is a concern. False information or misinformation. I'm always told by developers that data sets will get better, machine learning algorithms will come into place. But what concerns me is that if we really replace the Googles and Microsoft Bings of the world with the ChatGPTs and Bards from these very companies, that they aren't advanced enough at this point for us to make it, for instance, and for the larger audience, the search engine of choice.
Yeah, so there is a discussion, and that discussion really talks about is like, if you have to really worry about AI, you have to worry wisely, right? So otherwise, there are a lot of extremes that we see. So one extreme says that you should halt it, you should pause it. Yes, there are some areas where you need to think about that because in biotechnology field, there are certainly some areas which people are talking about you shouldn't go to that paradigm basically, right? So we are talking about cloning of human for that matter actually. So similarly, there are some areas now AI is hitting those areas where there is definitely some areas where people are saying probably we shouldn't be venturing. So there was one small experiment Stanford University is doing with Google, where they are setting up a village where these AI agents are talking to each other. And they evolve in a way to interact and engage with so well. They started forming a relation between them as well, actually. So some of those worries are certainly bigger worries, and there are a lot of futuristic which talks about what kind of engine it will look at. So one part is that basically, but other part in terms of bigger worries of securities and privacy, ethics, and what we talk about, right? So we also need to be balanced that with the kind of a benefit it brings to the society, to the individual, more importantly also individual basically, kind of empowerment gives basically. So how do we really, and at the same time, we have to do it in such a way that we are addressing this quickly, right? Means that's the real danger of this one. So there are different models. One is this UN of AI, but other model which people are talking about is more like a laboratory model. Global laboratory model where that laboratory will keep continuously looking at what is the challenge and keep throwing the challenges, and that could be used for the regulation basically. But India, last point here is the India, because of digitization story that we have created for ourselves last 4 or 5 years of time, the kind of volume scale that we achieved, with that volume and scale, if you can really put in the context of the larger, bigger LLM ecosystem, I think we could really create our own story in this area as well. And there are definitely some startups, some companies are doing their effort in this area.
Vinayak, a lot of your work with the SCI involves speaking to the regulator, engaging with policymakers, think tanks. Now, whenever there's some sort of emerging tech, disruptive tech, and of course we will hear from the minister shortly, but what are you hearing? Is the establishment ready for what's coming their way with AI? Are they embracing AI in your opinion?
See, I think the digitization story of India, if you look at, it's an intervention-driven story, right? And publicly supported intervention-driven story, and we have this digital public infrastructure we talk about, right? So in a way, the government intervention, and that's why this DPI we talk about, had learned how to understand, comprehend, and use that to the achieving some of the difficult problems of inclusion of economy, right? So now we could able to bring that high value, low volume ecosystem or digital payment to the low value, high volume ecosystem because of the UPI kind of intervention. So I think there is definitely some critical expertise that do exist with the government to understand this better, to put it in the context of the challenge of the society face. And I believe they are grappling with this, and hopefully we'll find better, interesting solution as we have seen in the issue of the digitization.
Jaideep, I'd love to get your thoughts on how do you really advise the workforce and young people in the workforce who are reading up on what the chat GPTs and the bards of the world are all set to do and genuinely worried, like you said, about their jobs. Should you be embracing it? Is upskilling the answer? Is really changing tack the answer? How are they supposed to approach this? Because a lot of people keep feeding into that narrative. But at this point, we're a little clueless about solutions when it comes to the workforce.
So the answer actually is very simple. You need to continuously upskill, reskill, and reinvent yourself. I mean, that's how you stay relevant. Use the tools, embrace the tools. If your organization does not have an AI policy as yet, you can practice full disclosure, work with your managers to say that, hey, I use the AI tool over here. This is the input that came from AI. I improvised on top of it. It'll allow you to show initiative. It'll give you a full disclosure within the organization without having to worry about have you picked up malicious code, as you said, or incorrect references. To your point earlier, just to digress a little, I mean, solving this hallucination is actually very easy. I mean, this technology just needs to use the references wherever there is a quote. And that's how white papers and Wikipedia is built. So, I mean, that answer is simple. But the workforce needs to have their own ethics, the moral compass, and a full disclosure policy. That will ensure you're continuing in the journey within the organization. And always, I mean, for the people who are ready to get into the workforce, who are in the higher education system right now, fully embrace all of these tools to your disposal to look at how you're being tutored, but do not use it for plagiarism or impinging on anyone else's intellectual property. And in fact, the educators must bring this into the curriculum so that it's augmented learning and not educator versus the student using AI and preventing AI. I mean, it should be evolving beyond that.
Kanishk, Jaideep really touched upon a very touchy point, especially for creators and the creator community, plagiarism. Right? I know now there are GPT tools where you can actually make out whether that particular output was generated from an AI bot, but that's concerning. There are people using well, ChatGPT for step one to compose a song in the tone of Eminem, which perhaps would be sung by Mohammed Rafi. Then going on another AI software and using those lyrics to do it. And honestly, I wish we could play a small clip for you at some point. You can't tell the difference. Isn't that a concern? Plagiarism, the fact that originality could be a lost virtue?
It's a big concern. So, I'm trying to complete my PhD and I have to submit my thesis. So I was trying to
Are you using ChatGPT in the course
No,
of it?
so I'll tell you, that's the analogy. I was trying to tell my boss that I need to take time off because I need to write my thesis. He said, why do you need to write your thesis? You've got ChatGPT. I said, the institution I chose to do this PhD is very strict on plagiarism. And they will do fact-checking very thoroughly that even specific lines, if they have been picked up from ChatGPT, those could lead me to being told that you're no more required to complete this PhD, you are not meeting the ethics standard. So today, a lot of educational institutions are moving up the ethics standard. But at the same time, there is a big opportunity on fact-checking. How many fact-checking tools do we know can find out if something has been written by ChatGPT? That's a huge opportunity right now. But at the same time, ChatGPT a lot of times is misleading in terms of the content which it is giving. My wife works for one of the consulting firms and they have decided to ban ChatGPT. They have issued official advisory. They've got DLP systems, and she still tried, using ChatGPT just to figure out what the answer is. She figured out the answer which ChatGPT was giving was false. So you really can't rely on the information which is coming out from ChatGPT. So your reliance on ChatGPT could be misleading. You could be putting the world into trouble by taking decisions, because tomorrow if judges start taking decisions using AI, they could send somebody for a murder trial behind bars because ChatGPT told them that this murder, based on the evidence collected, collates that this person is guilty. So those are the big risks that we are running in, and across every spectrum, across every job, you would require some amount of basic analogy to verify facts. That's something which is a big concern right now.
Vinayak, how much of an issue is that? How do we eliminate bias from these data sets and ensure transparency?
Yeah, because current models are largely based on the publicly collected information, right? And people who put together their content, and that content is getting collected and processed at parental level, and that's why the biases which is available there is biases of ChatGPT and those kind of AI models as well. We are seeing that there is cautious efforts being taken by some of these players basically in terms of removing those biases, and every country in India as well, we have responsible AI ecosystem policies and discussion which are happening, and we are trying to see how can we put together kind of a structure, kind of a parameters which can be looked at from the biases perspective, right? Because biases are multi-way, right? There could be bias from the gender, bias from the color, bias from the even a story that you are writing and the character you are putting together. So the entire the bias, the equation of the removing bias, that itself will become so complex and so contextual basically. So how do you make sure that that context of that particular thing that somebody is trying to ask, somebody is trying to look at, so that context for that particular instance is paid properly to this AI model. And there are some startups working in this area and we are supporting them basically. When you are putting together a kind of a query to this model, so seeking the API call. So what can you do itself in that query, in that the kind of layer that you add on top of the such kind of LLM, so which can probably solve some of these kind of challenges at an end user level basically.
You know, when we're talking about internet companies, Web3, all sorts of disruptive tech, also the crypto wave, which we won't speak about right now.
Yeah.
We had roundtables. Often we had a lot of policymakers, even members from the government special committees who used to speak to us. A lot of us tech enthusiasts about this. If we created one for 30 seconds for each of y'all, what would be your 30-second pitch when it comes to AI regulation, India not being left behind, and the way forward? Vinayak, let's start with you.
So we have opportunity, right? Our data protection regulation is still coming, right? And so also we are talking about Digital India Act, right? And we are also trying putting together some strategy for that. So how do we look at India's context of some of the kind of thing that we are doing for digitization story plus digitization capability that we have basically? How do you bring that context and also the kind of population, the life and society that we all have in the discussion of this regulation, basically, right, how we factor the context of India is very important part. And then also look at the future that we can see for our country in terms of the opportunity and in terms of the use of these entire capabilities.
Kanishk?
So as being one of the largest democracies in the world, how do you safeguard Indian democracy and let it function effectively? How do you safeguard user privacy and you take care of trust and safety of the vulnerable group on the internet? Those are three broad principles which are much needed when you talk about AI or talk about building safeguards for AI.
Jaideep? We saved the best for last, huh?
So let me add the economic angle to this one. So, I mean, we are the only nation that is reaping the demographic dividend right now. And we just started a journey. This is going to last for another 30, 40 years. We'd be going from a developing to a developed nation. And we'll all be around to see that happen. One of the big things that all the other countries saw during their journey was the industrial revolution. What we are seeing is the digital and the AI revolution. Let's embrace it. Let's be responsible about it, but let's use that to leapfrog the journey and improve everyone's life in this economy.
Gentlemen, what a stellar session. You set the bar high. A huge round of applause for our opening session. And thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen.